All right, bonus video. I know. I'm excited too. Your cups truly runneth over. I wanted to talk a little bit about Charlotte Perkins Gilman's Yellow Wallpaper. This is fun. This is an amazing story. This is it's read a couple of different ways. Obviously, the very most important way that it's looked at is one of the early forms of feminist literature. If you talk about like literary canons, there's a feminist literary canon, and this would certainly be involved with that. There are other people that look at it as, oh, it's a horror story, right? About this wallpaper that's possessed and infests the mind of this woman and eventually manifests and some sort of possession. Um, and some people even look at it as just a poke at the early aspects of medicine. Medicine is they practice it, right? It's not perfect. They just recently figured out that you have to take oranges on long boat trips. I mean, we're not that smart. We may have gotten to Mars, but about the time that Gilman wrote this, I think they were probably still leeching people. So you just need to be bled with a leech a little bit. So it's the rest cure, and that's what she was diagnosed with. Needing rest. Now, Gilman wrote this, and much like The Open Boat, this is kind of based on a real story. She had postpartum depression after the birth of her child, and she was given rest. That's what she needed. She just needed rest, and so she wrote this story kind of based on that. So you can kind of see the deterioration of her health, her mental well-being over the course of this entire story, and her husband happens to be her doctor, which is convenient, I guess. Of course, at this point in time, probably 99.9% of all doctors were men because they had the opportunity to go to school. And so it wasn't like she was going to get a woman doctor who goes, well, I understand postpartum depression. They didn't. And what you don't need is rest. You need to get out and get some fresh air and be active. So it talks about how she gets into this place, right? And the very first thing she has is this overwhelming sense of hate for this yellow wallpaper. Now, what does the yellow wallpaper represent, right? Is it the domestication of her world as it's kind of set up around her? At one point, she thinks that she believes that it was a nursery. But in any case, however you look at it, whether it's the lining of the inside of her domesticated life or, some reference to a nursery, you can see that it becomes a form of oppression as she starts to see the various patterns and the intricacies. And Gilman describes it with just incredible detail in discussing all the lines that don't end, or how they start to take on a life of their own. And they start to press in and oppress her, correct? So that's basically what you have. Now, the idea that her husband and that is the doctor is kind of a convenient way to kind of work this into the plot, because at this point in time, women deferred to their husbands. And so not only is she deferring to her husband, but she's also deferring to the medical standards of this time. And so it's kind of, both of these things that are kind of oppressing her. And again, it's kind of the man knows best. If you think back to the old, oh, she's being hysterical. When women are hysterical, you slap them, right? I mean, that old school thought of, how do you handle things that you don't really understand and you don't have a grasp on. And so, she feels like she can start to write the character, and she wants to express her thoughts and get this out on piece of paper, and that this has some type of therapeutic value for her. But of course, she has to hide it from him because he doesn't want her writing. And so much of this, it goes into this. I mean, Gilman, was obviously, she wasn't encouraged to write. And this goes back to kind of the Virginia Woolf idea on Shakespeare's sister. And I don't know if you've read that. It's a very fascinating piece. But it talks about Judith, which is Shakespeare's sister, and kind of talks about, well, while Shakespeare was learning Latin, she was learning how to sew buttons and, mend socks. And while he was learning how to, write plays, she was learning how to clean the house and cook food. And how, as society's kind of progressed over the time, these men have had the opportunity to write great literary works that belong in the canon, and women were never encouraged to do that. And so the fact that Gilman was even able to, write something as profound as this is a testament to her own creativity and fortitude as a writer, because she wasn't afforded that same level of opportunity. So it is interesting when you look at it from that standpoint of what opportunities were afforded to men and what opportunities were not afforded to women, and yet they were still able to do works like the Yellow Wallpaper. And again, you think about this in the scope of history. I mean, we are still, I don't know, 25 years prior to women even having the right to vote, which men immediately regretted, because the very first thing they did was vote for abolition, getting rid of alcohol. Like, not my beer, you took my beer. I knew I shouldn't have given her the right to vote. So kind of ironic in that standpoint. So as it goes on, he's trying to help her. He keeps making her stay in the bed. She wants to write, she wants to get out. And yet, she says no, she just deteriorates into madness until finally she's like on the ground. And it looks, in the story, like if you read it, I know it looks like she's going to hang herself. She doesn't hang herself. The use of the rope at the end, I always thought was a little bit curious, and I thought, oh, that's it. And I don't know, she's at the end of her rope or what it might be. Oh, it's overly simplistic. So, all right. Gilman, Yellow Wallpaper. Anything to add on that? I don't know if I have anything else. I think that's basically it. By the way, Gilman, who had her bout with postpartum depression and was given the rest cure, she ended up separating from her husband, and then she ended up writing this story after she wrote a novel, and then she sent this story to her doctor, who prescribed the rest. So I think that's a little, thumb in the eye. But anyway, great story, extremely important in regards to feminist literature. Pay specific attention to, her descent into madness as she keeps getting pressed into this. And, it's kind of that terrible medicine where it's for your own good, and it's not for her own good. The ironic aspect of it is that it's absolutely terrible. So, all right, thanks.